Hey guys, this is Zach with Star Wars Newsnet. I'm so excited to be here. Snow Day edition for me here in Ohio. Um, I am so excited to be able to talk to Khal from KR Sabers. We're going to be talking about mostly lightsabers, but I imagine we might go on a few other tangents. Khal is so well versed in the Star Wars community, so well loved in the Star Wars community. But we'll stick around primarily the elegant weapon for a more civilized time, likely. Khal, let's just get this party started, man. How are you?
I'm really good. It's what, 7:15 right now, so winding down a little bit for the evening, catching up on some emails. It's funny because when you're in different time zones, it's like, what time do you finish work, Cal? They think, oh, it's 5:30 here in the UK. I'm like, well, no, I finished 5:30 for Europe, and
Mhm.
then everyone's waking up in America, getting ready, and then it's this 5:30 to sort of midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning sort of grind that you have to do each day to keep on top of things.
Absolutely. What's the weather like in London right now?
Well, we've had a crazy like chill blast recently. I mean, I'm wearing a hat indoors because it was so cold earlier, and now like people are being a bit more savvy with their energy bills because energy bills went up so much. If people who follow international news know that we have a cost of living crisis happening
Yeah.
because energy bills are through the roof, things like that. So people are suffering with this cold chill that's come in. But yesterday it was -5 in the morning and then like degrees Celsius. And then I think today it was probably like close to zero, really cold.
Okay. Well, okay. So let me paint this picture a little bit. Let me set it up here.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So Star Wars is a vast community of people. I mean, millions of people, right? So where I'm
Hmm.
starting to see some really cool things happen are in the sub communities. Um,
Right.
this is kind of where I came across Khal and KR Sabers. I started to delve a little bit into the DIY saber situation. Me and my buddies and my son and I actually, we've built a couple of lightsabers. And Khal, I mean, you were always so helpful. I would, I would probably just message you on Facebook, and you were just so quick to hit me back and just so helpful. We had no idea what we were doing. It was the first time we'd ever soldered anything. We just know we wanted to make a lightsaber light up. So within this community, I just want to say thank you for all the awesome things you do.
Oh, it's my
And thank
pleasure.
you
My pleasure.
personally. It's been a blast. So before we get this party started, I'm going to break the ice a little bit with a little bit of this or that. Are you ready?
Ready, ready, ready.
I'm going to focus mostly on your Star Wars fandom. All right. So we're not going to get to sabers until the end of this. All right.
Okay.
Light side or dark side?
Light side.
Yeah. Okay. Who's the better scallywag, Han or Hondo?
And always.
Yeah, of course. Okay. Better vacation spot, indoor or Scarif?
Endor, I like the grassy nature walks, the
Hmm.
trees and stuff like that. I like that. Yeah.
The music seems nice there too. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
A
yeah.
lot, pretty primitive.
And furry creatures.
Of course. All right. Would you rather pilot an X-Wing or a TIE fighter?
Oh, X-Wing's pretty cool.
Hmm.
And if
Okay.
I'm light side, I got to
Well,
stick
yeah, that
within
all, it's
the
convention.
bounds. Yeah.
This is the way, or I have spoken.
Oh, this is the way.
Uh-huh. All
It's a
right. This
frequent phrase. It's a
it
frequent
is.
phrase in the house.
So the Queel thing, I mean, the first time my wife and I watched The Mandalorian with our kids, and they really latched on to "I have spoken," right?
Oh, I see. Yeah,
So
yeah,
you see how it goes. But for the
yeah.
rest of it, I agree. I'm with you. This is the way. All right, last one. This is going to kind of transition into our saber talk. Coolest Return of the Jedi saber, Luke or Vader?
Luke, always Luke,
Yeah, I think,
always.
see.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I can see it proudly sitting there.
Yes, sir. All right. So Cal, just tell us about KR Sabers. What's going on? Just give us the overview.
Yeah, so, well, lurker off the forums in sort of late 2012 and early 2013, and then decided to join the forums in July 2013. And it was just basically to sort of understand how these forums worked. But there was notable people that I would see there that I look back now who have also gone quite far. And still within the community today. So you kind of get involved and learn about how the forum works and basically, a place to share what you're working on.
Mhm.
And at that time, there were only a few vendors sort of making empty hilts, Corbanth being one of them, because he used to sell on the RPF quite a lot as well. And it was a place where I was like, okay, well, whatever lightsaber I'm working on, I can share it here and, get feedback from people and get to know the community better. So I start looking for empty hilts. I find out about Corbanth. I'm like, okay, cool. I find out about parks, park sabers, all old school sort of empty hilt providers. Turns out, Corbanth was a distributor of Parks, so it was Parks kind of behind a lot of this stuff.
Okay.
Then there was limited runs that Vader's Vault would do, which was always very cool. And then people like Mike Hudnall would do some runs, Orbital Machining as well, his Ace Rocket, who now works for the Custom Saber Shop full time as their CNC machinist.
Okay, cool.
And we'd jump in on these runs, and some of them would be intended to sort of accept electronics. Some of them would just be something you'd get and you'd have to spend weeks like modifying the pommel, adding sound holes, building chassis from scratch, like machining them from like Delrin and things like that. And it was just something I really enjoyed. So me and my dad actually built the first one together. We built it on our kitchen table. I bought the parts to install it from JQ Sabers with Susan and Darren, who were in Wales at the time, also part of the forums. And we built it together. We used a 7.4 volt battery instead of a 3.7 volt battery on a Nano Biscotti soundboard, version 1, and almost blew up the whole thing. Realized quickly that the board was getting too hot, and then we got the right battery because I called up Susan and was like, the board's getting too hot and all this is happening. And they were like, oh, we sent you the wrong battery. So I did the right battery. And because my dad's name's Rizza and my name's Khal, and I was like, okay, I said, Dad, it would be funny we just call ourselves KR Sabers. And then me and my dad laughed about it, and I put the pictures on the forums, I put the video on the forums and put it on YouTube and stuff and shared it. And someone bought it, and I sold the saber. And I was like, this is quite cool, I'm working full time and I could build these sabers on the weekend and maybe sell them as like a thing to do. But I enjoyed it a lot. So I got the next empty hilt from Francisco, who was living in Venezuela at the time. He was One Replicas. And I started like having a connection with him, a dialogue with him. Then I didn't even really know about FedEx, but he was able to send me stuff from Venezuela and I get it really quick. So I was like, perfect. So I ordered the next one with the intention of like getting all the character lightsabers built, the ones that I always wanted Hasbro and Master Replicas to make. And I said to my dad, let's build the next one. He's like, I'm too busy. And I'm like, oh, I guess I'll just do it myself then. So I carried on building it myself. And then I was like, this is really, really fun now. And I just rinsed and repeated. So it was like, okay, build a saber, a character that I wanted to do, sell it through the forums and so on. So I'd been doing that from like 2013 to 2015. And then in 2015, I became a bit unwell and I was off work for quite some time. And I had to surrender my driver's license because I had really bad eye pain one day in the office. I used to work in an asset manager. There are Fidelity Investments, I think, operate in the US as well. So I used to work for Fidelity Investments. And I couldn't read my emails at all. So I was like trying to look at it from different angles to read the words, but it was like if I saw the word look, I would just see LOK. It would just be like lock, and I'd miss those double numbers. So pounding headache, and I was driven home by my manager, and I had private healthcare at the time, so they were like, "Oh, you can come in and we'll do like a scan of your eyes. We'll also do a scan of your brain at the same time." So they were like, we'll give you the results sort of in about 2 to 3 weeks of the scan, the MRI scan. And they called me that afternoon and were like, look, you need to come in tomorrow. We found like a 55 millimeter tumor on your pituitary gland and it's pushing on your optic nerve. And that's why. So first thing I said was, is it benign or malignant? They were like, it's a benign tumor, but we found it now and this can explain things. So I had to do a visual field test, like by law. So you put your head in like a dome, and they'll do these little dots everywhere, and you'll click it when you see a dot, and they can map out your visual field.
Yeah.
And obviously, I failed that. I had like 50% vision. So I had to give up my driver's license. I was off work for about 5 months whilst I was going through some treatment options and sort of dealing with the situation. And during that 5 months, all I could do was build lightsabers. That's all I did. I became like obsessed with it. I started learning how to do 3D modeling and things like that. And when I went back to work after the 6 months, I ended up getting like a promotion after a few months into wealth management. And then they restructured the whole of the wealth management side of the business. And they were like, look, your jobs are at risk of redundancy. And here's your severance package if you want to take it. And or if you want to stay here. And I had a bit of a bad taste in my mouth about the whole situation. And I thought, you know what? I actually want to do something else. And I'm going to look for jobs in the new year. This was in October 2015. I'll look for jobs in the new year and go from there. And as I was learning more about SolidWorks and CAD design, I designed the Graflex blade plugs.
Oh, yeah.
And I used to make them to order through the forum. And I'd machine them on the lathe. And I was selling a lot of them because Force Awakens was coming out and the Graflex was seen again. Then the orders became like too much through a forum. So I made the Etsy. And then when people were buying blade plugs on the Etsy store, they would message me and go, "Oh, do you have any like spare recharge ports? Do you have any spare switches? Do you have any batteries by any chance?" And I can get, and I know that you do builds. And I was like, "Yeah," I was like, "I can give you some or sell you some or whatever." And then I was like, maybe I should just put them on the store.
Yeah.
And then I started adding more items and more items. And then it just became to a point where I was like, oh, like I'm making in sales, what my salary was as working in this job. And then I was like, let me just see where this goes. And I just kept on going and going and adding more and more and more. And then I was like, I'm pretty sure like this could be my full-time job. And then it was just a matter of learning about business, learning about how to set up companies, and becoming someone in the community that was kind of like doing things how I kind of saw them. Because I don't know how long you've been in the community, Zach, but there were times where empty hilts were $1,500, $1,600.
Yeah.
And I had made contact with a factory, and I asked Francisco, I was like, "Do you like hand machine these, or do you do like a CAD model?" He was like, "I'll do like a CAD model, and then I'll machine according to that." I was like, "If you want, I can find out like what it is if we outsource the production." And I looked at the price of what came back, and I was like, I could sell these hilts for a fifth of what these prices are, and surely it would be like a game changer within the community.
Yeah.
So I did my first run, which was like 25 Qui-Gons, and they were gone in like a day. And I was like, oh my God, like people love these.
Oh yeah.
There was some people that weren't very happy that I was like selling them for a certain price.
Sure.
And I got the whole, oh, it's cheap Chinese inferior metal. It's this, it's that. But everyone loved them. Everyone absolutely loved them. And then it was a case of like, now, okay, I'm venturing into this territory, which is this kid, because I was 19, 20 at the time, has come into this community as a builder who was just sharing his work. And now he's kind of doing things in a way that can affect us financially, the people who had already been in the community.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I had a bit of resistance in the beginning, and how I was doing things. Now I've learned a lot about how these communities work. I understand there's ethics and there's certain etiquette that you have, which I've come to learn. But I think the problem is that this has now become like an industry rather than an actual like small group of like hobbyists that get together and meet together. It really is an industry. And you can look at companies like Ultra Sabers and Saberforge and Vader's Vault as an example. They've got teams, they make many sabers, and it's now basically a whole competition market between those big guys selling complete lightsabers. That when I looked at that, I was like, I actually don't really want to be like that. I don't want to sell production sabers right like at this point. I said, my satisfaction came from making that last wire connection and it booting up. And I was like, yes, like it's working.
Absolutely.
And that was where the excitement came from. So I was like, seeming as though Tim at the custom saber shop only sells within the US, it's like $50 to get a box of small parts. I was like, maybe I should just focus on designing and making parts for building for the DIY community, because that's kind of where I fitted in. Yeah. Because when I would talk to DIY builders, like they felt the same way and so on. So that's how it went. Yeah.
Yeah. So while you're here, I'm curious, you mentioned Saberforge and you mentioned Vader's Vault. So when I think on a grander level, or at least more well-known level, how has like the Galaxy's Edge, the Hasbros, the larger companies like Galaxy's Edge, meaning the ones you can get at Disney World,
Yeah.
Like what's your take on that whole situation, how it relates to you guys in the community and all that?
Well, I think the type of engineers and designers that make those products have to make it to fit within a very specific like regulatory like situation. So they probably have to be a certain type of battery. I don't think those Galaxy Edge or Hasbro ever use lithium ions. I don't think they ever do. I'm not sure. Yeah, from what I understand, I think they use alkali batteries or nickel NIMH batteries because for transport purposes and for like safety reasons. Also, they have existing partnerships with these companies that mass produce these products. So they probably make them all in a certain way and they stick to that footprint. Well, but when you look at places like Vader's Vault and Saberforge, for example, they're designing things with like an artisan mindset, which is how can we make something that is functional, but is also like a piece of art in a way. And I think for Hasbro and Master Replicas and stuff, they were designing sabers that looked like the props that could be a lower price range and could be made in a specific way that helps save costs. Not because they want it to be bad quality, but because it has to fit within a certain criteria, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that's what they were focusing on, and they used the technologies that they're familiar with, not this kind of underground technology that we kind of use all the time. Because I mean, for example, I doubt that big companies like Disney can use open source tech like Profi because of the warranty that's associated with open source technology. They might be able to use the code, but they would have to release those designs and code because it's an extension of an open source thing. So they probably have these closed source schematics and things that are just affordable, less powerful controllers or ICs and chips, and sort of have always stuck with that. And you know, we sit back sometimes and say, why don't Disney or Galaxy's Edge ever do things like we do? But at the end of the day, like they've got their customer base. Their customer base have an expectation of what to get from there, and the customer base have the option of getting the type of higher end products from places like Vader's Vault and Saberforge. You know, because regardless of what people's feelings are towards those companies, they've been pioneers in pushing the industry forward. You can't doubt that. Like you can't help but think if it wasn't for companies like Saberforge, Vader's Vault, and so on, who have been making production sales for such a long time, which helps exposure and create awareness about the community, like the community wouldn't be as big as it kind of is now. You know? So it's one of those things where Disney, Galaxy's Edge, Hasbro, they're going to keep making the sabers in a way that suits them, and I think they don't really pay too much attention to how we're building them, because this is the sort of sub community. It goes the same with general props that they make. You know, if you buy a helmet from Black Series Hasbro, although they've got much better, it's not going to compare to one that you might get from an artisan maker within the community who focuses on every minute detail, because it's not profitable for Disney to spend all this time like capturing all these tiny details, paying for all this tooling and stuff. They're like, let's make it look like it, make sure it works like in a way that a kid can interact with it, and let it release into the market.
Yeah, that's good. So, and you're talking about technology. That's something that I'm super interested in, especially within this community. I remember when NeoPixel became a thing, that was, for a lot of people in the community, the coolest thing they've ever seen. Where are you seeing technology move things right now? The new tech coming in.
I mean, we're doing some experiments now with the longboards. I don't know if you knew about the longboards that I'm making. So obviously, as time goes on and you start to see how the market changes, you've got to try and adapt to the market. LGT has been a big influence in how lightsabers are now introduced into the community. They've got a certain style of doing things where they have removable cores, and they've got various vendors all around the world that are pushing these products out. Obviously, they meet a certain price bracket, and in order to reach that price bracket, they have to cut some corners. I don't mean cut corners for worse. They just have to avoid certain things to save that cost. So that obviously opens up an opportunity for other makers who have a customer base that can afford a bit more, and say, okay, well, what can we make that suits that particular niche? Because at the end of the day, my business has been successful by targeting a niche, which is DIY builders who want higher quality components and want to build it themselves. So how can we target that and meet those expectations? So, for example, I mean, I've got one here. This is our longboard, our new one that's going to be coming soon. So LGT Sabers don't have onboard Bluetooth. This will have onboard Bluetooth. We're developing an app for it right now that allows you to set up the lightsaber. Like, I mean, you can buy smart plugs these days, and this has a whole setup app, but it's just a little smart plug. So why can't we have stuff like that for lightsabers, where you get your saber, and instead of saying, oh, what's it pre-configured with? You can be like, don't worry about any pre-configuration. Open up the app, connect to the lightsaber, and you configure it yourself through an app. You set your colors, you set your blade profiles, and so on. So that's what we're doing with this. LGT use separate buttons, like button boards, PCBs. Like ours has the button built on, so it's there.
Yeah, cool. Yeah.
That way the core can be fully removable and the buttons can stay in place, because we've designed a button assembly system so that it's spring loaded and you can move one core of a lightsaber to another one super quickly. And the good news about these is they come 95% assembled. So you've got a speaker connector here to plug your speaker in with a 2-pin connector. And then you've just got your pads at the top here for deciding whether you want to do a NeoPixel or a Tri-Cree.
Yeah.
So the reason why I'm going to push this quite hard later in the year is because there are people that see boards like this. This is the Verso V3, which will be coming sooner or later, and they don't like the idea of doing too many solder connections or too many pads. So I think I'm trying to bridge that gap between the person who sits on the fence about building their own, because if they get something like this with 2 pins to connect on this, oh, it's blurring out, 2 pins to connect on the speaker,
Yeah.
and then 3 pads to solder in, 3 big pads, they're going to say, I can do that. Like, I can do that. And I have a little video guide to go with it when the time comes. And they build it and they fire it up. And then that will help them say, oh, actually, next time I'm going to go for one of these and put it into like a nice machined replica. So I think in terms of moving the technology forward, I think it's things like this that's going to be interesting. These all-in-one boards that have higher specs, and we're also working with haptic technology now as well, where instead of like clicks like that the speaker plays or indications, it is felt within the hilt like a haptic engine on an iPhone or on a Android phone, something like that. These haptic engines. So we're doing some tests with that as well, and I think we can take inspiration from different places to try and add those inspirations from other technology into lightsabers without going too crazy. You know, we don't want to turn it into like a TV remote and be like, yeah, you can turn on your Amazon Fire Stick with this as well.
Yeah,
we just want to have some features. So I'm really excited for this. It's going to be something that I've been working on it for about 18 months now. I'm not ready to release it because it's not fully ready yet. But I'm really going balls to the wall with it. You know. Yeah. And I think this can be a real game changer for people who want to have interchangeable cores, interchangeable parts, and a whole line of a whole series of hilts and models and variations that people can get into building. You know, because if the majority of it's done for them, they'll be really happy. It's all ready to go. And I've even made eco versions of this as well, so that this is the eco longboard. It has onboard flash storage instead of like a big SD card. So we've even got ones that are even simpler that will be coming. Wow. So this is all like pretty exclusive stuff. I haven't really spoken about it in too much detail. You're actually the first to hear about the eco longboard, so that can be a magazine exclusive. But yeah, it's pretty exciting. Like I'm so passionate about this stuff, and I can assure you, doing this kind of development, like unless you're an engineer yourself and have the time, it's not cheap. But yeah, I'm a firm believer in making these like cool new stuff. And I think I had so much fun developing the LED strips that have been really successful. And I love seeing people like not having to stick flexible strips back to back, and they can use my pixel sticks and make it a bit easier. I like doing things that kind of cause a little shift.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a marriage of engineering and artistry, and once you get one in your hand, you can see that immediately. They're just such beautifully crafted sabers. And it's such a cool, the community's so cool. And this is what I wanted to talk to you about. If there's a new person, a newbie that's starting to get into building, or really getting into any kind of or already established community, right? That can be an intimidating thing to do. So
absolutely, yeah.
What advice do you have for someone that wants to start getting into building their own sabers, or checking out hilts that they want to install, or just genuinely getting into saber building?
Yeah, I would definitely say if people want to get started into saber building, YouTube's becoming quite a good place for like tutorials and information. And we've got several tutorials about building sabers and building blades on our channel. So, I mean, I would start off by looking at some of the tutorials like on my KR Sabers YouTube channel. There's also different like Profi tutorials, because that's kind of the market leader for boards right now, and they can learn about it there. But in terms of the community, I just think the number one advice is don't be afraid to ask questions. Like I think a lot of people who are new might have a basic question in their mind and be afraid to ask it, but everyone starts somewhere. So if there are any new builders out there who are looking into getting into this hobby, even going onto one of the groups and be like, where do I start? Like if I want to start building lightsabers, where do I start? 99% of the community members will give you good resources and information. But I would say go into this community knowing that you're not going to have friendly encounters 100% of the time. Yeah. There might be someone who leaves a smarky comment like, oh, read the manual, something like that. Yeah, but some people are not great at reading information. Some people are dyslexic, or some people have learning difficulties with written things, and they need a more visual guide. And that's totally fair. So, but just understand that there are people who are going to be within the community, any community. It's not just the lightsaber community that might give drier responses, but the majority of people will give you good information and want to help you. And I think just don't be afraid to ask these questions. And once you get past that initial learning curve, you'll then realize like how enjoyable it is. And like I said, that first satisfaction of hearing a boot sound and stuff is like a next level. And you'll be so happy that you stuck through it, learned it all, and you go through this journey. Because the same way that model train making has been a huge hobby for so many years, this can be like on par with that, I'm sure. Because the Star Wars fan base is bigger than most franchises. Probably, if you look at franchises as a whole and their fan bases, I'm sure Star Wars is top 3.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah. And that's, I think, where for me, the whole idea of saber building became so romantic for me. I remember, and this is what I was going to ask you about. We've talked a lot about the construction of a lightsaber. I'm interested to see where you sit on the lore aspect of lightsabers.
Oh, right.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
So it's like, is this where it started for you? Because for me, it's just, I remember, and I think every Star Wars fan is going to have a memory of their first interaction with a lightsaber. Was it the first time Luke ignited his in Obi-Wan's hut, or was it, for my son, it would have been I think the first saber he saw was probably a crossguard, Kylo's saber, which I'm like, that's maybe one of the coolest things ever.
Yeah, that's a cool one to see in the beginning.
Exactly. Well, if you remember the TFA trailer,
he's
like silhouetted by a snowy, woods, and he ignites it, and then a half a second later, the crossguards ignite.
It's setting the internet into a frenzy.
What is happening?
Yeah.
Right? So, talk to me about how these lightsabers speak to you on a lore level, on a fan level.
Yeah. So I was born in 1993, and Phantom Menace came out in 1999. So I was 6 years old when I saw Phantom Menace, but I didn't see it in the theaters. We were having an extension done on our house at the time, and one of the builders had a 2-disc pirated DVD.
Nice.
And we had a computer in my mum and dad's room, and I was 6 years old. So sometimes I would go and sit in that room and watch a video through the computer's DVD drive. And that was where I first watched Star Wars Episode 1, this 2-disc series with a purple disc and a green disc. And I watched it, and I remember seeing Qui-Gon's lightsaber and Obi-Wan's lightsaber when they were escaping through that ship that they were on, where they were having these negotiations. And
Trade Federation ship, right?
Yeah, the Trade Federation ship. And he's putting the lightsaber through the door, and it's melting. And I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. So much so that I became like obsessed with Episode 1, where I was having the action figures. I even got, for those of you who remember, there was a little thing that you could get that you could hang on your ear, and it gave you the little Padawan tail.
Nice.
Like the little hair piece. So I had one of those, and I'd walk around with it in my house. I'd carry my Naboo starfighter, and I was flying it around. And I just became like obsessed with Episode 1. That was me. Like, I was hooked then. And then obviously Attack of the Clones came out like 3 years later. And then Revenge of the Sith came out. And that was when Revenge of the Sith came out, I got one of the telescopic plastic lightsabers from Toys R Us. And I would just fight with them with my friends, to the point where you fight with them so much that they fold because the plastic was too thin. And then when I was a bit older, and the budget for birthday presents went from, £20-30 to maybe like £100. My mum got me a Master Replica's Vader A New Hope
nice.
Force Effects lightsaber. And I remember videoing myself on like an old Sony Ericsson phone, but it would never be as bright in person. But if you looked at it on a video with a 3GP camera, it would glow so bright, and there'd be this white central blade, and you'd be like, damn, I look like a Jedi right now. And you'd be so happy.
Yeah.
And I was like, maybe I need to get the other one. Like, I've got a red one now. Maybe I should get a green one. And then, there's a blue one too. And there's the Yoda's one, and there's Obi-Wan's, and there's Count Dooku's. And I remember driving like 2 hours, like when I was like 17, to get the Dooku lightsaber from someone in Brighton, like an hour away. And
Dooku's awesome. The curved hill, I mean, it's super cool.
But the Master Replicas one was chunky. Like, when you think about, I could never afford like the real Master Replicas. It was just the the FX toys, because the real replicas, the display ones, the limited edition ones, were so expensive.
Mm.
And then I had them all. I had pretty much all of them in boxes under my bed. And then obviously you get a bit older, and I became really into BMXing. So that was where my next passion was. It was in BMXing, and I used to ride my BMX a lot. So much so where I tore my cruciate ligaments and couldn't ride anymore.
Yeah.
And I wanted to go traveling, and I said, maybe now's the time to. They're not going to make any more films. I had nothing about films. They're not going to make any more films. I'll just sell my MR and Hasbro's, and I sold them all for more money than what I paid for them, because they had gone up in value. And the guy that came here to buy like the last few that I had said, "Oh, have you got Qui-Gons?" And I was like, "No." And he was like, "Oh," because I'd seen a video on YouTube. And I was like, "Oh, show me." So he showed me the video, and then he left. And the video was still up on the screen. And that was when I was like, this guy made his own lightsaber. And that's kind of what got me looking into what this whole situation was. Because there was always that part of me still that liked Star Wars and lightsabers.
Oh yeah, and I imagine that's true for anyone that gets in these, niche specific things. I mean, when you really stop and think about it, people that craft thermal detonators, and I know you've done an iteration of the thermal detonator.
That's right. Yeah,
So,
yeah.
why do we get into these things? Well, ultimately it ties back to our love of the franchise. Something when we were watching this just got a hold of us, and it was like, I gotta have a lightsaber. I gotta hold that hill.
I think one of the most powerful feelings in the world is probably nostalgia. And I think it can turn any sane person crazy, because at the end of the day, as I've gotten older, I'm going to be 30 this year in September. And there's been times where I've seen something or heard something that I would have heard when I was a kid. And it just races you back to a time where you had no worries, no stresses. It was just all about having fun, enjoying yourself, enjoying time with friends. And then these little things that we collect and buy are just tokens and memories and triggers in a way of how we felt at one point in our lives.
Yeah.
So, there are people who were born in, the late 70s or early 80s who went and saw a film, and they might have been holding their mum's hand when they went to the cinema and remember sitting there eating popcorn, seeing the lightsaber on screen. But, as they get to 40, 50 years old, these memories become very cloudy. But there might be a thing that they see on a Facebook advert or Google advert that says Luke Skywalker replica lightsaber, and they see that, and immediately they're transported back to that time.
Yep.
And they think, this is I remember I was there with my mum, and they get this sense of calmness, stress relief.
Absolutely.
This is how I felt when I was a kid. And that's what those things mean. I firmly believe that. There are some people, obviously, who collect things in the world, who collect them simply for in the hopes that they go up in value.
Yeah.
I've yet to meet anyone that buys lightsabers for holding value.
Right.
Everyone that I interact with has a connection with these things. I don't think there's any other reason specifically to Star Wars than that connection. And that's why I don't think this hobby's ever going to go away, because as long as there are kids now watching Star Wars, they are going to be the next generation of people collecting these lightsabers. Because no 6-year-old's going to buy a £500 lightsaber, are they? But that 30-year-old in 24 years' time might. And I think that's where the connection is that overwhelming sensation of nostalgia and where these items take us back to. And it sounds a bit cliche, but that's truly what it is for me anyway. Right. And I think a lot of people feel that way, in that, these are little time machines back to like how we were at a certain time.
Absolutely. It's a mnemonic device, and honestly, it's one of the coolest aesthetic weapons that's ever existed ever on film, who in the world, it's just like, it's brilliant.
It's the most iconic prop in history by far.
That's what I was going to ask you. Is it the most? It's got to be, right? I mean,
without a doubt. Without a doubt. I've yet to meet someone and be like, "Do you know what a lightsaber is?"
Right.
And they're like, "Oh yeah, I know." Yeah,
of course.
From Star Wars, right? And I'm like, "Yeah, that's what they are." Some people do say you make vapes, and I'm like, I don't make vapes. Like, they look at my Instagram, they're like, "Oh, you make vapes?" I'm like, "No, they're like they're lightsabers." They go, "Oh, I thought it was vapes." I'm like, "No, man."
Oh, that's perfect. That's funny. Goodness. So, like, just a few more, and because I love talking to you, I could talk to you all day about this stuff, especially when we get into the lore of it all as well. So, we've got the dark saber, right? And I don't know if you've read any of the High Republic stuff, or seen any of it in the comics,
Right.
but the designs of these lightsabers, just conceptually, are
Mm.
crazy these days. So I love them, right? So just the diversity of what we're seeing, like the dark saber, and honestly, like that when I didn't know much about the dark saber until I saw Clone Wars, and they did the whole like this flashback, Tar Vizsla talking about the the forging of the dark saber, and then when they made it in live action, I don't on it's just movie magic to me, right? So
Mm.
now they're starting to in the High Republic, they're creating these cross guards that have I don't like this kyber bolt from the singular blade down to the hilts or to the cross guards, and I'm like, these are the coolest. Like it's becoming
Yeah.
like this medieval centric style blade. So have you seen any designs that you're interested in, or things that are kind of inspiring you moving forward from some of this newer stuff?
Well, I mean, when I think about how difficult it was to do the Rey Skywalker, to the point where, it took three of us to bring it to fruition,
Hmm.
Dennis especially was a huge like factor in bringing that to the market, because it was one of those situations where it was like, okay, this is going to be a lightsaber that has true like mechanical moving parts.
Hmm.
And I was saying to myself, maybe we can do this if we design it right. And obviously, it was a huge success, and I have to thank Dennis and Cedric as well, for us all working together to be able to bring that to the community. But then it begs the question, what's next? Like,
Hmm.
what else can we incorporate? And obviously, I'm a big watch guy. I love watches. And you look at these tiny little mechanical assemblies and you say to yourself, can we really make something that incorporates mechanisms, micro mechanisms like this, where it really is something that is astounding to look at?
Hmm.
Now, I worked with Dimitri recently on a new Graflex chamber design that I think is going to be pretty iconic. It's a lot of small parts. I've machined two samples worth. Haven't had the time to even dissect what screws I need to get because I did it so long ago.
Hmm.
And I think now, like designs that I'd like to do, I'd like to incorporate mechanisms into them more because
Hmm.
it's very challenging to have a lightsaber that has these mechanisms. Harp is a great example. The Japanese artisan who makes lightsabers, he has these little hinges that open and close,
Yeah.
and they're really amazing to look at. And when you think about the fact that he designs them by hand, it's much simpler for me to sit on a CAD on a computer in CAD and draw up this design for them, the parts to be machined and made. But he's genuinely sitting on hand lathe and milling machines
Hmm.
making these mechanisms, and it's really phenomenal. So I think now I'm becoming more interested in making unique lightsaber designs. I think now a lot of the time, especially when new people come into the community, they heavily focus on making replicas to try and boost their reputation and try and get their foot solid within the door. But it gets to a
Hmm.
point now where if I'm busy running the parts business, the Saber Armory, and designing and engineering unique products, I can't keep up with keeping consistent replicas being released. So instead, what I might do is I'll work with artists and I'll give them an idea of a concept that I have. I want it to look a bit like this, a bit more royal. I want a shroud up here like this because I'm good at describing like how I want it. And the cool thing about working with concept designers is that they can really like take what you're giving them and draw it on paper, and then we can make like four views of the lightsaber. Then I can
Yeah.
take that, make a rough 3D model, and then work on breaking it down for engineering. And I think the Regis hilt is a good example of that, where I had an idea for a unique hilt. I've got a concept drawing, we make a 3D model, and then we engineer it. And I'm working on the next one, which is called the Fortis hilt, which is really going to be a beautiful lightsaber. We're doing the engineering for it now. I'm so excited to release it. It's quite cool. I had some nice ideas for this one. Um, and I think I'm really enjoying just the idea of making lightsabers that have never been seen before, because
Yeah.
once you build up this kind of customer base and they like your style, you should really like hone in on that and maybe say, well, I'm not going to do another run of whatever character because there's two other people doing it. I'll just do one that's unique to me.
Sure. Yeah,
And
that's cool.
I really like doing that because you get to know a lot of really talented people in this industry, super talented. And it's kind of like synergy, 1+1 = 3, where I can work with one other person and make something totally new, and that the community really like responds well to. That's what I'm looking forward to a lot. So I know that I can obviously study the expanded universe and comics and stuff like that to get inspiration from those designs, but I think it's a lot of fun having an idea of a design in mind, the materials that you want to use, and having a concept and then bringing that to life, because that's inevitably how they do it in the studio.
Yep.
They have a team of concept artists. They give a description of the character. So this is the kind of guy he is. You know, take from it what you will. He grew up here. He's disadvantaged. He's an outcast, whatever, and see what you come up with. Then they'll have drawings. They'll minimize those drawings. They'll get 3D models made. They'll go from there, and then they'll print it or they'll cast it. And we're kind of following the same process now. It's just that not in an official capacity where we are making a new movie with just our own artists that are now bringing unique designs to life.
Yeah, that's so cool. I love that. And I'm sure whatever you'll come up with will be just amazing. I'm sure that will be true.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited. Like, I hope people like it. I think I'm developing a bit of a style now, so I'm keeping the Fortis hilt that's coming soon in line with the Regis, and hopefully I'll develop that range further.
Cool. Well, so as we close down here, Khal, just anything moving in the future for KR, for what you've got, your future endeavors. Just tell us about what you've got coming in the future that you want to, I don't know, if you got anything you want to plug right now, man, go for it.
Yeah, so I mean, the biggest thing is obviously the warehouse. You know, I started off in my mum and dad's house on the kitchen table. My dad kindly gave me a corner of his garage for a little bit to put my mini lathe and mini milling machine. He had a lot of tools as well that he allowed me to use. And then he took it even a step further and built me a workshop in the base of our garden, about 450 square feet that I could work from. And that's what I've been working out of for the last 6 years, 7 years. I've got storage units and stuff for stock, but in terms of working out of there, like that's where I work out of. So to be able to be in a position where I could not just rent, but purchase a property that's 5 minutes from my house with 5,500 square feet, soon to be 6,500 square feet, where I can just execute all of these ideas without any restrictions, without any landlord over me or any people looking down on me that preventing me from doing that. I think that's going to be a real game changer. But my firm belief is that this particular aspect of the community that I'm working within can be a bit more transparent, a bit more open, a bit more community driven and audience driven. And I want to take what I'm doing now, put it onto YouTube and social media and grow it to a point where we have I can say it now while I'm talking to you. I want to get to 1 million subscribers on YouTube. And I really want to make this a hobby that everyone wants to do and enjoy. I really want to do that. And I think the only way that we can do that is to be more open about what we do it in a place like the warehouse, create content from there, show what projects we're working on, like daily builds, 1-day builds, modifying this, modifying that, and just creating content about what we get up to. Because anyone random that I meet in the street or anyone that I meet in a business setting or someone new, they ask what I do for a living. They're always fascinated by it. And if that's just someone random within a few miles radius, who knows what the globe thinks. I know people say the Star Wars fan base is a huge fan base, but the lightsaber community is still relatively small in the grand scheme of things. Right. So if we can shine a light on it a little bit and create this audience that is built on the KR Sabers YouTube channel, teach people about building lightsabers, educate them about electronics, show them how we do certain things about building and weathering and painting and things like that. Just fun little projects, but document it in a way that is quite easy to digest. I think that's where I see the future going. And then we can create this YouTube community and interact with people that way. And they can sort of follow us on this journey of starting out on a kitchen table to the development of this warehouse and maybe where that might go from there, you know? Because I don't know where it's going to go from there. But this warehouse, this industrial unit, the new headquarters, is going to be the catalyst for a lot of amazing things. Yeah. And I'm happy that I didn't rush into anything in the last 5 or 6 years that kind of locked me into a certain situation and said, no, I'm going to stick to the plan, save up my money, make good decisions, and an opportunity will come up for you to secure a premises that you can keep for 40 plus years without any risk of it being taken from you or you being kicked out. And that's where this is going to be. And I can design it in my own way, you know, and that's what we spent the last year doing. And now the biggest pain in my backside is bats. As crazy as it sounds. So when we do planning, we have to do an ecology survey. They saw a hole in the side of the building under the cladding, and they make one note and say there could be bats in there.
Nice.
The fact that he said there could be bats in there, we now need to do a preliminary ecology survey specifically for bats, and you can't do those until May.
Oh, nice.
Because of temperatures. So now they're saying to us, you can't start working until May, until this survey's done. So that's me being excited to start work on the warehouse in March officially, like contractors in, everything, get the roof off, get the new roof on, and so on, to now 2-month delay because of bats.
Potential bats.
Potential bats, exactly. I don't think they're in there. I don't hear nothing in there.
Hey, well, I'm thinking out of this warehouse, there's probably going to be, this is finally where their R&D with real lasers are probably going to happen, right? I imagine.
Exactly. Yeah. We are going to have a development room in there, and we are also going to do a small replica of the Millennium Falcon inside the warehouse. So we will have like a quarters area that will look like the Millennium Falcon.
Nice.
So I'm really, really excited to build that out and create content from there, because I do watch a lot of YouTube. I like what YouTube's done for me because I've learned so much on there. And I'm like, well, maybe we should apply the same formula to this very niche community.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on that. Congratulations on 10 years on the warehouse. I mean,
it's crazy.
It's going to be an awesome year for you, man. So good for you.
I'm super excited.
I hope for many tens more, right? For you and KR and Sabers and everything else. We're going to make sure we have all of your handles down in the comments.
Cool. Thanks.
Oh yeah, man. And if there's any other plugs you have, please.
Well, you need to one day come to London. Yeah.
I'm here for that. I was in London about 4 years ago, and it was maybe the best trip of my life.
Well, you need to come back. Come back next year, obviously, because the warehouse is done. And you can have a tour of the warehouse, and we can do a second interview in the studio that will be there, and you can see the whole thing and let me know what you think.
Well, let's make a plan of it. I'm here for it. I'm here
Perfect.
for it. Love it.
Let's do it.
Khal, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Star Wars Newsnet, thank you for hanging out. This has been Khal with KR Sabers, and we've got all of his handles and descriptions. You guys have a splendid evening, splendid tomorrow, whatever it may be. Adios.
Thanks for having me. See ya.